This recording was originally a live conversation which took place at Founders Tap back in October 2022.
When you're freshly out of university, you can code very well, but like to really build the product from the tech side in a scalable way, this just needs a lot of experience.
Welcome to the Swisspreneur Show, a podcast about startup stories and learnings from experienced entrepreneurs. Here's your host, Sylvan.
So Tanja, you're the co-founder at Amplo, a no-code platform that makes AI easy and accessible to service and operation departments. Before we talk about your company, I actually want to start with your personal background. You studied mechanical engineering at the ETH in Zurich, and at one point you were actually doing your master's, working as a teaching assistant at ETH, and also as a project manager at Mercedes-Benz. That's quite a workload. Were you always an overachiever?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think on LinkedIn everything always looks so nice, but I think I was very happy to learn like very early on in my professional life that actually like failure is okay. So it's okay to fail and you can redo stuff. That's why probably my LinkedIn also looks like that. I did my master simultaneously with my project manager intern position at Daimler, but actually this wasn't the case. So so maybe I can tell you a little bit about that failure like very early on in my professional life. So when I was in high school, I wanted to become a ski instructor. So this was like the thing that you do in Switzerland, you know, when you have a lot of holidays, then you go up the mountains and work as a ski instructor. And to do so, you need to do like 1 week of education, and then you have a test in the end. And the test was about like your skills in skiing, and then you also had like a practical test where you had kids and you had to teach them. And actually in the skills test where I had to ski, this was fine. But in the methodical test where I had to teach the kids, I was so nervous that I forgot my skis downstairs.
Oh no.
So obviously I failed that test. I think I was one of the only one that failed it. And I was so embarrassed that I couldn't talk about it. So then I worked as a ski instructor. This was fine. You didn't have to pass the test. You were still able to teach. And then at the end of the season, I had to redo that test. And only as I passed the test, I could really talk about it. So there I really learned that it's okay to fail and just retry. So, and this was a similar story with my master's. So normally a master's at ETH takes 1.5 years. I did mine in 3 years because I dropped my first master thesis. So that's why it looks very nice on LinkedIn, but normally the story behind it is a little bit deeper. But I think I learned a lot about that.
I think that's a great life lesson that you learned along the way and that you can also share with us today. Thank you for doing that. Before you then actually started your own company, you worked for the ETH spin-off and startup themselves, 90 Labs. Did that serve as an inspiration for you to really embark yourself on the entrepreneurial path or career?
Yeah, totally. So there I joined like as the 18th employee, so not super early, but we were still very small and not a lot of processes. So I really had the feeling all the time that I was like a part of the team and that I could really shape the company. So this was super cool. Also, those 3 co-founders from 90 Labs, I think they did it very well in like empowering the employees and make them aware that they can really shape the company. So there I learned a lot in those 2 years. And at some point when we grew, of course, then I felt it a little bit that as an employee, you can't influence like all the decisions anymore, obviously. So I really had there the wish to start my own company. But when you start to look for it, normally there need to happen a lot of coincidences that it really happens because this we talk about later, but I think the team is always super important, so it's hard to start on your own. But yeah, it was an inspiration.
I can imagine that must have been a really tough decision, right? A fast-growing ETH spin-off, great startup company, amazing career path in front of you, probably with some nice stock options, to then decide and say, hey, I'll leave all of that and I start my own company. What were your thoughts and maybe also fears back then?
Yeah, so I think it wasn't about like the stock options or the option to grow. It was more like really, I felt like super loyal to the whole team, and we grew together. We were there like actively raising the new round. So it's always a little bit as an employee, when you leave a company, when you know they're in fundraising, it's not a good sign. And we had some people that left before me as well, so I knew it might influence that whole process. But what I did then is like I met Oli and Niels, and I started to work like 1 day a week with them. And so we could get to know each other. And I always told 90 Labs that I did that. So they knew that probably if that works out, that I'm going to leave the company. So for me, it was just super important to tell them from the beginning that I'm looking into different things.
So the transparent and open communication is probably a key takeaway here that worked well for you.
Yeah, totally.
And you mentioned the other two co-founders of Amplo, and that's exactly what we want to talk about today, right? So it all starts with the founding team, and the first question is, of course, how can you tell if someone is a good co-founder or not to embark on that entrepreneurial journey together?
Yeah, I think this is a hard question. I think you can't say like this one is a good founder and this one is a bad founder. But I think the team really is the key ingredient that this works out fine. So you actually want to find a team that is very similar in the values, I would say, but very different in skill sets. And it's super hard to find that combination, because you want to be an expert in one field, but you also want to learn from the others, and actually you always want to learn in general, right? So it's a tough call.
So to summarize it, it's basically shared values but complementary skill set, right, that you were looking for. This sounds great in theory, but how does that actually show in practice? Was there any moment where you say, now it really clicked and I know that I do want to start a company with these people, or how was that developing over time?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think since we had that 1 day a week where we could work together, you realized quite well if you like each other or you don't like each other. So the values, they were easy to, or for me, they were easy to check, I think. But the skill set, I mean, we're 3 mechanical engineers, so very similar from the engineering background, but like from the skill set, very different. I think Niels is very good in coding and machine learning, so this is like his absolute favorite subject. Then Oli is very good in like, how can you implement the technical stuff at the customers, like that combination between tech and customer. And then it's me. I think for me it's very easy to talk to people and to get a lot of insights really fast, and also like to accelerate the sales process, because it's just easier to enter when you like to talk to people. Yeah.
So despite the same background, still a very clear split of roles and responsibilities.
Yeah, totally. Mm-hmm.
Many people also think about, where could I potentially find co-founders? And obviously you land in your friends network, maybe even your romantic partner. Have you also thought about, these parts? Because there are some hard opinions about that, where people say you should absolutely not found a company with your friends or people close to you, while others say it's the best thing in the world. Mm-hmm. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think I also have a very hard opinion on that. So for me, it was very clear in the beginning. For example, I don't want to involve my family or my mom and dad financially in the startup, because I didn't want to have that pressure that if it doesn't work out, that they suffer. So this was for me a no-go. But of course, with my family, I always knew, for example, if it doesn't work out, I can go live with them, for example. So the support was different. Then like founding a startup with a romantic partner, I think for me this is super hard because the relationship, like this founder relationship, this is already like a real relationship where you have to work on it. So for example, we have like every 2 weeks one-on-ones where we talk to each other and say what's good, what's not good. And it's really, we work so hard on that founder relationship that I think it's too much to have the romantic aspect in it as well. Yeah.
I mean, in the end, it's probably also personal preference to a certain
Totally.
degree, but it's very interesting to see how there are so many hard opinions on that one. It's rather black and white than a gray area for many people. How do you actually then meet your two co-founders? Like, did you have any, from your studies, any background there, or did you really meet and then just started the company together?
I knew Ollie from the bachelor's, but I mean, at DTH in mechanical engineering, 550 students started at that time, so I knew him. He was always the guy with the mustache and the motorcycle.
Talking about personal branding.
Yeah, exactly. But we weren't friends. But what I did when I knew I wanted to found my own company, what I did is like really share that in my network and say like, okay, hey, I'm looking for an opportunity. If you know someone that knows someone, just let me know. And then actually we got introduced to a mutual friend that afterwards also became our business angel. He was coaching them on the sales side. And then he called me afterwards. It was a Sunday because he did those Swisspreneur coaching.
Nice.
So he called me on a Sunday like, Tanja, I found your like the perfect match. You need to meet them. And then we met, and it was it was cool.
Amazing. Is there a certain thing like the right amount of co-founders from your perspective, or asked differently, is there any number that is too big to start a company together or too small?
Yeah. So I mean, there I always had a hard opinion as well, and I think this changed a lot in the last couple of months. So for me, it was always like optimal to have 3 people. I always thought like that's the perfect number. Like when you live together with friends, it's always 3, right? So, but what I learned now, and what I also learned from the employee experience with our very early employees, I actually would love to have more co-founders, because I think as a co-founder and as an early startup employee, it's always you're a little bit differently incentivized, obviously. So I think the more the merrier, because then you have more people that like do everything for it. Yeah.
So more like 4 or 5 or even more than that?
Yeah, I think 5 is a good number. Yeah.
Okay. And in that regard, I mean, there are some examples, right? I think Yokoi is an example where they do that, or even 7sense Robotics. So there are multiple examples with a lot of co-founders, way more than just the 3.
Exactly. And I mean, we have 3 of the 5 co-founders from Yokoi invested in us. So
Perfect.
Yeah.
You also mentioned that you started working together with 1 day a week. So you basically started working part-time. Is that a good setup to get started, or is that something that you would change now looking back and go full-time even earlier than you did?
Yeah, so I think when we started, since we didn't have a lot of experience or a lot of working experience, and we had to somehow finance our lives, we had to do that way. But I think if it is possible to go full-time, I think it's absolutely necessary to succeed in like the funding rounds, for example. So I think it was good for that time, but as soon as we went out like raising money, we knew that we need to go full time.
So that was also clear for you. And then the other question is, of course, how do you split the share amongst the co-founders? Because from my understanding, you joined a bit later than the other 2 founders, right? So did that change anything in the way that you structure and split the shares, or how did you solve that?
Yeah, so there I think we all are. So since it was before the first financing round, it's a little bit different. So there I'm a big fan of like having it shared equally. And equally, of course, they worked on it for over a year. So this wasn't the most fair solution, of obviously, but I think we made a very, very fair deal that everyone feels super involved. But I think the best thing always is like split it equally.
And then you not only invest your time, right? You all work full time now, of course, in the company, but some people might also invest their own money or money from family and friends that they take out as a loan and then invest in the company. Is that also a challenge that you faced when splitting the shares, or was that not a big topic?
No, this was really not a big topic from our side. I think it can become a big topic, but I think it's very good when you're in the beginning, when you're very pragmatic. And I mean, we all knew, for example, if we would go to a corporate, this is just a different thing anyhow. So we didn't make a big fuss about that. Yeah.
And no need to share, but of course, people are very interested. You have the shares in the company, so you have a big upside. Yeah. You still, of course, have living expenses and bills to pay. Is there a good range of salary that you say you should pay yourself as co-founders in the early phase? No need to give specific numbers, but maybe a range that you can share, because that stuff always helps people to compare.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think, I mean, since you work... as a co-founder, you just work a lot. So I think it is nice if you don't have to really also super focus on your spendings, and you can't go out during lunch to go eat somewhere once a week, for example. So I think then it gets really hard because you always have to think about that as well. So I think a good range is just that you can cover the living expenses, but don't live with a lot of luxury. I think that's,
I remember back in it, but that was 7 years ago when I started Gym Hopper, my first company there. We paid each other $3,000 per person per month, which was on the lower end because I then moved in back with my parents to save on rent. But I fully support what you said. Cover your living expenses, but not more than that. So probably anywhere from 3 to 5K is probably a normal range.
Okay.
One thing you also have to think about, you are very pragmatic, you are excited about the start of the journey, but you of course also have to think about, what if this doesn't work out? What if one founder wants to leave, or if we have to let go of a founder? Did you also talk and think about that scenario?
So we're talking about it, not in the sense of leaving, but in the sense of that we're now very committed to Amplo, and if there is a change in our feelings, that we talk about it. And I think I know it's also in the shareholders agreement. We have a clause what happens when someone wants to leave.
So it's usually, I guess, the traditional vesting schedule, right? Where you say after 1 year, you have to give back all the shares, and then they vest over a certain period, over 4 years probably.
Exactly. Yeah. Because, and I mean, it also makes sense, when you have someone that is out of the company but still holds 20 or 30% of the shares, then it's just very or not interesting anymore for investors, because it's that. Shares.
I mean, that can seriously kill your company in the future, right? So very important. It's not a comfortable conversation to have, but better have it in the good times than in the bad times.
Totally, yeah.
So now you have the co-founding team together. You have split the shares. You know how much salary you're going to pay each other. You're ready to give it your all. And at a certain point in time, you then realize, we actually need more people than just the three of us to get the job done. When is that moment? How did that feel when he said, hey, now we're ready to hire the first employees? Was that quite early on in the journey?
So we did it very early. So, when we we did a small angel round in last December. And there, money was super cheap. So it was very easy to convince those angels. And then we thought, this is easy. We just raised our pre-seed afterwards, so we can already start hiring people. With really a small convertible note from those angels. So I think there we took a huge risk to already hire them. But then in the end, it was super nice because we had time to onboard them in a time where it wasn't that busy, over Christmas, beginning of the year. It's always a little bit easier when it comes to customers. So we could onboard them, that they're now working perfectly.
Is that something that you would do again?
That's a very good question. I think it really depends on the market. If money is that cheap from to get, then yes, I would totally do it again. Now, of course, we're in a little bit a different situation now. I wouldn't recommend to do so.
We're also going to talk about that because even in the current difficult market environment, you still raised another round. We're going to talk about that in a minute. What I want to also talk about first is the hires that you made. What were the roles? What were the first hires that you decided to go for to grow the company?
Yeah, so since Oli and me more worked on sales and Niels on product, we knew that we need more people from the product side. So what we hired then was a full stack engineer. She's now working like on the front end and back end, and a machine learning intern. And now I'm really excited. He starts next week. We hired a senior software architect, which already sold to companies. So he's very experienced in building a scalable product. And this is something I think we learned on the way very well, because when you're freshly out of university, you can code very well, but like to really build the product from the tech side in a scalable way, this just needs a lot of experience, and now we have someone that comes on Monday and really puts a lot of effort in that it's scalable and that we also can scale the tech team.
So this sounds like a very strategic approach from your side to say, hey, we need this in order to go where we want to go in 1, 2, 3 years from now.
Yeah, so to be honest with you, this was also not our idea. That was we then had the lead investor telling us like they would do it, think about it, and then we thought about it and thought like, okay, yeah, that's actually the right way to go. But of course, the first senior hire is always a tricky one.
And on top of that, it sounds all very engineering and developer focused. What about the sales and marketing part? Is that also something that you would hire early on, or is that something where you say, oh, this can wait a bit, we first have to figure it out ourselves?
Yeah, I mean, we have Thilo, he's our business development guy. He's coming from Uni St. Gallen, so we're super lucky to have him, and he likes to make his like hands dirty, you know. He's really doing founder's work as well. And I think it's not easy to find someone in sales that wants to do that product market fit, pre-product market fit work. But he really likes to do it. But of course, it's also challenging for him because he knows he's one of the first employees. He can really shape it and everything, but it's just not a product which you can sell directly, like I don't know, like a croissant in the morning. So yeah, for him it's also hard, but we're really happy to have him since we have that engineering background.
So this sounds like you found the right people for the right challenges at the moment. How did you find them? Were there any specific networks or platforms that you used to find them?
So for the first 3 hires, we only put it on LinkedIn, and then we had great applicants. So there we were very lucky, I think. And the senior guy, he was over in an intro. Yeah. So
got it.
Yeah.
And then senior people, of course, for many entrepreneurs probably here in the room, they think, oh, senior, that sounds very expensive. How do you compensate them? Because you probably cannot or don't want to pay the market salaries. So how do you compensate them to make up for that potential loss?
Yeah, so the good thing is with senior people, most of the time they already earned like a lot of money, and most of the people, not of course not everyone, but they realize that okay, earning money is actually not the thing that makes me happy at work. So I think there, when you find someone that is more incentivized by like he or she can shape the company, they can grow, it scales fast, they learn a lot, they have a lot of team members they can take care of. So I think it's more like the daily business with you can incentivize them with. And of course, then you also have a nice PESOP and okay salary. Yeah.
Got it. And one last part, when it comes to the team, that of course also changes as you hire more people, is your internal communication structure. That's a big challenge for many startups, because when you're starting out as 3 co-founders, you just constantly talk to each other. You're always up to date. You know what's going on. As soon as you have more people, it gets way more complex. So how do you organize and also communicate at Amplo today to still stay an efficient company, but also ensure that everyone has the required information?
Yeah, I think this is something that we should look at it for sure. Also, like over the Christmas weeks, but at the moment we just have like one office where like everything is mixed, so everyone hears every conversation. So we don't have phone booths at the moment. We don't have a meeting room, so it's very open, and. Also, we are very open. So one of our co-founders, he's Dutch, and I had to learn that in the beginning, that he's very direct. And I think our whole company culture is just very direct. And at the moment, we're 7 people, and all of us they can handle like very direct feedback. But we all know that as soon as we hire someone that can't handle that very well, we have to change. But I think we just have that very open feedback culture, and then we have a lot of people in the office. This is also very nice. So normally tech people love to be in home office, but this we don't experience actually, because this is also something I would suggest, is like really having a nice infrastructure, like a nice work space for the tech team, so that they love to code in the office rather than at home. So you can make sure they enjoyed their stay in the office.
What's your tip there? What is the nice setup that you offer them? We all want to know.
Yeah, so this is now really for the tech team. I learned today during lunch. So actually, when you have 32 RAM, it's nicer to code, because then it doesn't need so much refresh when you code something and try it again. So you save a lot of time and you don't lose focus that easily. So a laptop with a 32 gigabyte RAM apparently is a nice thing for the developers, and for the sales team, a good coffee machine.
Got it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Now I also want to talk about fundraising, because you closed a 1.6 million pre-seed round in September. So basically, when all hell broke loose in the stock market and everything was like crashing, basically. So my first question is, how did you pull that off in this difficult market environment? I know it's probably months of work that go before that, but still, it's not easy to close a round in that environment.
No, I think there are multiple things that come together. For example, first we had our great angel investors that knew a lot of early stage investors. So I think this is always a good thing when someone invests in your company. Try to find out if they know a lot of people that could invest in the next round, and really ask them like openly, and if they are already open to do an intro before you actually then go out to raise. So
this is actually a very interesting point. I think many don't think about that, because the investor's main job is to help you get to the next financing round. And I think if you see it that way, then you start to ask different questions, and you start to pick other investors with this network to maybe the next VCs who could then do the professional round, etc. And I think that is crucial to consider when you do the fundraising part as a startup.
Yeah, totally. So it's a really, I mean, in the beginning, you're always super excited because someone wants to invest in your company and believes in you. Then you're so happy and you don't think about it. But I think that's a good tip. This is the first thing, and the other thing is we went out like very, very structured. So we knew that we go out in March. Like going out means we have the pitch deck available. We know exactly how much money we want to raise. We know for what we want to use the money. We know what our product is. We know to whom we sell. So this was the thing we had. And then we had like a list of VCs. And there we just tried to get either an intro, actually over an intro or over events. So we had this list of VCs. And then I'm not sure if I would do this again. I put them on a very tight time schedule. So I told them like, okay, in this week you can have the first call with me. Then in the next week you can have the call with the founding team. Then you can go into your like small due diligence, and then at that date we want to have the term sheet.
Why would you not do it again, or at least think about it again?
Yeah, so I was very optimistic on the timeline. So I communicated this date where I would love to have the term sheet signed. And then in the end, it wasn't that date, so it was a little bit later. And I think this can be very dangerous because VCs talk to each other, and when they know you actually wanted to sign the term sheet and you didn't sign, this can also,
that could be a very bad sign, right?
That could be a very bad sign.
What would you change now looking back? Would you said no timeline or no deadline at all, or just allow them more time for the different stages?
Yeah, I think more time for the different stages.
Okay. And was the current market condition, after COVID and now with the market meltdown, the way lower multiples for software businesses, was that a topic at all during your conversations?
Yeah, it was a topic, but since we were so early stage, and you see like you see a lot of statistics that the early stage companies weren't that much harmed by that downturn in the beginning of the year. But I just tried to not think about it. So for me, it's never an option, but that's also like personal preference, I think. For me, it's never an option that I have a excuse that it didn't work out. So I try to not think about that. Yeah.
And if they brought it up, I could imagine that investors also trying to gain some leverage, trying to say, oh, your valuation is a bit lower now because of the current market conditions. How were you able to push back a bit as a startup and say, no, we actually have a higher valuation and that's what you should sign up for?
Yeah. So, we just created FOMO.
How do you do that?
Then you at some point you have like your VCs you would love to have a term sheet from, and then of course they start to ask you questions like, with whom are you talking, and then you never lie, but you just make yourself very how do you say, like a little bit like hard to get, and then this actually works quite fine.
And how do you do that? Do you just reply a bit later to their emails, or do you say that you're talking to these other fancy VCs? How do you do that?
Yeah, so what I did,
We want to know the dirty tricks.
So I traveled to Berlin, and one of my best friends, she lives in Berlin. So it was more like meeting my friend there. But of course, all the VCs thought I'm traveling to Berlin to talk to all the Berlin VCs. So I think that was a smart move. And of course, I also had some meetings with investors. But you saw it now. We didn't have any Berlin VC now on board. But I think it's always good to take the Berlin VCs because there are so many of it. This is also a good sign. So the Swiss VCs can't know all of them. So they don't know exactly with whom you're talking to.
Sneaky strategy. I like that. Now for the seed round, you actually traveled to Silicon Valley. What's the plan? We won't disclose yet. That's fine. Maybe my other question is, how did you determine how much money you wanted to raise? Was that more opportunistic driven, as you said, for the first round that you did, where you said, hey, money was just very cheap. We just got it in to hire the first people. Or was it way different in that pre-seed stage where you said, this is what we want to do, this is how much money we need, and then we probably add 30, 50% on top of that, because it's always going to cost more than we think.
Yeah, that's a good point. So yeah, we really tried we took a lot of time to really figure out how much money we need in the next 18 months to scale. And then there was a number next to it, and then we knew, okay, we need to raise so much money in order to grow that quickly in the next month. So there, it was a strategy behind. But so then you go out with that numbers, and what normally VCs do, they always have a target on like how much shares they want to get, and then also it influences the valuation. So yeah, I think you can go out with a number where you can really say, okay, we need this amount of money to achieve those milestones. And then, yeah, then it's a negotiation, of course, and it's mostly about the valuation.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Is there also a certain range where you say that's a healthy amount to give away for as a startup? Like often you read 10 to 20 or even 25%. Would you say that's a good range, or should it be higher or lower than that?
Yeah, I think I always had the number in mind between 12 and 20%. Yeah.
Perfect. And maybe two last takeaways in that process that took you about 6 months in total. Raising funds in, not an easy market environment. Tell us one thing that was easier than expected and one thing that was harder than expected.
Easier than expected is like everyone wants to talk to you. So also when funds don't deploy money at the moment, they still talk to a lot of startups because they don't want that you perceive them as a fund that already deployed all the money. So they talk to you they talk to everyone. So this was very easy to talk to them. And then what was harder is like to really find someone that is like really a fan of your team and your product and takes time to look at it. I think we found like great VCs that really took the time to look at it, and they are now also like experts in the field, which I really like. But this is hard to find, I think.
So to summarize, maybe it's easy to talk to them, but hard to keep their attention. Cool. I like that. So before we open for questions, think about them. If you have some questions for us here, feel free to ask them. We're first going to do a quick wrap up with some rapid fire questions. So what I want to ask you is either I give you different options to choose from or a quick question you have to answer in one sentence. You ready? The first one, founder or startup employee?
Founder.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Product or sales?
Product.
Beer or wine?
Wine.
Bootstrapping or VC money?
VC money.
Profitable SME or high growth exit?
High growth exit.
I mean, that's what you signed up for with the investors. And the last one, lakes or mountains?
Mountains.
Clear choice for you. Cool. Great. Let's wrap it up here. We have still plenty of time to talk, to network with some snacks and drinks over there. Thank you all so much for joining, and especially you, Tanja, for being our guest and for the very open and insightful learnings that you shared with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, you can support us by rating our show on Apple Podcasts. This way, we can reach an ever-growing number of aspiring entrepreneurs.